Welcome to New York's number 2 sports show. The New York Yankees 2024 regular season has concluded, with the Yankees having a final record of 94-68. They do secure the number 1 seed in the American League, and they do lose the final series of the regular season to the Pittsburgh Pirates. They lose 2 out of 3, losing the first 2 and avoiding the sweep in a rain-filled, kind of weird, ugly Game 3. So the biggest surprise to me over the weekend, as it pertains to the standings, was I didn't expect the Astros to, win those games against the Guardians, with the Astros having nothing to play for. But, at the same time, Cleveland, they got the bye, and that, they won the AL Central. They secured at least a top 2 spot. And so the difference between first and second may not be that gigantic in the grand scheme of things. For me as a Yankee fan, I felt it was preferable. And maybe the lesser of the deal was to have the home field through the ALCS, which the Yankees have, but also I would prefer to avoid the Astros until the ALCS, if at all possible. And so the Yankees will be facing the winner of the Orioles-Royals series. So that was something that you kind of felt for a while as far as the Orioles were concerned, because let's face it, for the longest time, whether it was the Yankees or the Orioles, it had felt like the winner of the AL East would finish in first for the majority of the season. Now, look, Cleveland was right in there for a while, so it could have went either way. But if you look back at the end of, let's say, each day, let's bring it back to May or June, I guess. Yankees, Orioles, if whoever didn't win the division, in this case the Orioles, won their wild card series matchup, you felt like the ALDS best of 5 series would be between the Yankees and the Orioles. From the Royals side of things, for a while, the Royals finishing as the 5 seed, Orioles the 4 seed, the Royals finishing as the 5 seed, that was something that seemed likely for a while. But then, really, up until the very end, the Tigers took that number 5 spot. And what was surprising there was the fact that Detroit, after they clinched, and that's the big thing here, because I don't think these teams are hung up on the seeding, especially when it comes to 5 and 6. You're going to be on the road either way. And there's probably not a gigantic difference between the Orioles, facing the Orioles or facing the Astros in a lot of these teams' eyes. So what ends up happening is the Tigers actually lose the last couple of games to the White Sox, and the Royals, playing a little bit of spoiler, actually win against the Braves in Atlanta for their last game of the season. So that ended up flipping that back to the Royals being 5th and the Tigers being 6th. So again, to kind of conclude on that part of it, that also was what you would have felt like. I mean, look, the Tigers were way out of it, and they almost leapfrogged all the way to the number 2 wildcard spot. So the overall point being, what the standings ended up being, Tigers notwithstanding, it's kind of what you felt like it was going to be for a large part of it. Yankees or Orioles at 1 or 4, Cleveland 2, Astros 3, Royals 5. Now the Twins were also in there, and the Twins, went into complete free fall, which allowed the Tigers to get in. So it really could have been Twins 5, Royals 6. But yeah, ultimately this is what it is. And we're going to discuss more at length, obviously. We're going to do a preview episode later in the week after finding out the result of the Orioles-Royals series. Now, be careful what you wish for, but I would prefer the Royals to beat the Orioles for a few reasons. And look, the Royals are very capable of beating the Yankees. They have a nice 3-man rotation. The top 3 being Cole Reagans, Seth Lugo, and then Michael Wacha. So really top 2, but Wacha has acquitted himself. He's been really good. I mean, someone who is a veteran in this league and has been a pretty good stabilizing force for Kansas City in that rotation. Royals bullpen isn't great. Neither is the Orioles. Obviously, the Orioles, there's Corbin Burns at the front of that rotation. Orioles have a deeper lineup. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, Bobby Witt Jr. for the Royals and Salvador Perez are dangerous. And so really, the difference may not be major, but I would prefer the Yankees to play Kansas City as opposed to Baltimore. Those discussions, it's meant for this episode, right? Because by the next episode, we'll know the opponent, And so who it is, between the two, you know, we we're going to find that out pretty soon. But I don't know, Yankee fans, I would suspect that Yankee fans are probably fairly indifferent as far as whether it's the Orioles or the Royals. But look, the Orioles head to head did well against the Yankees, and they know the Yankees very well. Yankees know Baltimore too. But I think, with those central teams, I just don't fully trust it. And maybe I'll be proven dead wrong, right? Where maybe this American League playoffs is all centered around Cleveland. Well, is centered around collectively Cleveland, Kansas City, and Detroit, right? Maybe that is what it is. And the Yankees and the Astros and the Orioles, they go out quickly, right? That could happen because we've seen these playoffs, like things can be very unpredictable. But yet, if I had to put my money on it, I see the Astros having success. And I think the Orioles, I'm surprised by how things kind of did fall off. Look, the Orioles are going in cold, and the Royals too. Like, those are two teams that have not been playing their best baseball going in. Although the Orioles have kind of found their stride a little bit in the last week of the season, I'll say that. But I still think that Baltimore team is good. I still think that lineup is dangerous. And again, like, I got to think of that. If it's Orioles Yankees, I'll say this now. I would predict that to be a 5-game series. I really would be. That would be my inkling and thought. Now, a lot of it will depend on what will the rotation look like, right? Because, and that's the other thing that I should mention before we go into more Yankee-related thoughts. And then we're going to touch on the Pirates series. I don't want to get too deep into it because, again, like, it's one of those weird, like, post-clinch of the division series. So, like, I'm going to try to avoid going through too much of the play-by-play. Naturally, I probably will, just for the sake of finishing out the season with consistency. But, this is an episode more about the big picture. But the last thing I'll say is, as much as I want the Royals to win, in thinking about it, if the Royals do win game 1, and this kind of reminds me, I guess, a little bit of a few years ago, when the Yankees were facing the winner of the Guardians-Rays. And, going into that, I think, again, somewhat indifferent. I think I preferred the Yankees to play Cleveland, if I remember correctly, but it was close. But what I did know was once Cleveland won game 1, I had preferred Tampa to win game 2. Now, that was a crazy game 2, that Guardian-Ray game, where it went deep into extra innings. But and look, the Yankees ended up beating Cleveland in what was a tough series. So that might actually be, forgetting about who wins, I think the biggest win would be it going 3 games. So that's probably the biggest thing. So if whoever, I guess what's going to happen here is, and for Yankee fans, we'll likely root in game 2 for whoever lost game 1. So those are my thoughts on that. As far as the Yankees roster and transactions and injury news, Anthony Rizzo fractured. The big thing coming out of this Pirates series is Anthony Rizzo fracturing the 4th and 5th finger on a hit by pitch. So it would seem as if he's a long shot for the ALDS. They didn't place him on the IL, so there still is a world where he is on that roster. But the way that Aaron Boone spoke, it wouldn't seem overly likely that he will be on the roster. And it's a tough break for Rizzo. He actually had been hitting a little bit better lately. The defense was better. Look, like, do I think he was going to have this like massive playoffs? Probably not, but you're really thinned out at first base. So segueing into the transactions, and then we'll work our way back to the first base scenario. For this series, there were a few moves on the roster. Will Warren had been called up before the game 2, and he actually pitched in that Saturday game. Not well. Cody Poteet was sent down, and Poteet, he had thrown a lot of pitches in game 2 of the Orioles series. Look, I think that, and this will be something that I think we'll discuss more in the preview episode as far as the roster projections. I think like Poteet, someone like, he could make his way on the roster. I'll have to think about that. But yeah. And then Warren gets sent down after game 2, and they reinstate Mark Leiter Jr. back from, he had left on the paternity list, but he was back on the roster and actually pitched in game 3, got into some trouble, also did strike out the side, so a little up and down. And then the last move was Ben Rice in relation to the Rizzo injury. Rice is recalled, actually started game 3 at first base, and they sent down Scott Effross. And Effross, if you remember, he had been recalled when Leiter Jr. was placed on the paternity list at the end of the Orioles series. So, yeah, now with first base, it puts the Yankees in a bit of a precarious spot to the point where, like, I don't know. My preference for the starting first baseman would be Oswaldo Cabrera overall. I think he's earned it. But I know that, like, going into the last game of the Pirates-Yankees series, I think in Yankees' minds and front office and coaching staff, I think Ben Rice probably had the leg up over Oswaldo. And I know they like to have Oswaldo as kind of that bench piece that can kind of move around everywhere. I do partially understand that. But I think Oswaldo deserves it. I really do. And I think there is actually a chance that he does start game 1. Now, also keep in mind, like, is it going to be a lefty or righty? But also, it's kind of like the left field situation. Ben Rice is a lefty. Like, think about it this way. Ben, in terms of, like, to put it simply, Ben Rice is to Alex Verdugo as Oswaldo Cabrera is to Jason Dominguez. What I mean by that is Ben Rice and Alex Verdugo are both left-handed hitters, and Oswaldo Cabrera and Jason Dominguez are both switch hitters, but better from the left side. So it becomes a bit redundant. That's where, for example, if like a John Birdie, if he could play first base, like, in theory, that could be a better option. Now, I don't think it's going to happen, but Boone did say that they are probably going to give Trent Grisham and John Birdie reps at first base. Like, that's kind of where we're at. And the good news is, from an anti-DJ LeMahieu stance, it doesn't really seem like he's in the mix. But that's the thing. Rizzo gets hurt. Like, if another first baseman gets hurt, all of a sudden, like, it's crazier things have happened. So LeMahieu, for now, coming off of that right hip impingement, he's looking to work his way back. I still think that is well off the radar, and I don't think we'll see him. But yeah, like, first base, your guess is kind of as good as mine as far as where that goes. So the Rizzo injury does hurt. It may not hurt to the fullest effect, but certainly from a defensive side, it does. I can tell you that. And look, at least offensively, he could, the power was kind of gone, but, he can draw you those walks, those hit by pitches, which ironically is kind of Rizzo's undoing. But feel bad for Rizzo because it's been a really trying last year and a half with that concussion last year, which really just fucked up his entire season. Then this year gets off to a really slow start, and then he has the arm injury, comes back, takes a little bit of getting going, then he finally finds his groove a little bit, and then, fractures his finger. So I just don't know what's going to happen here. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because, first base is a bit of a question mark. Left field is a question mark. And look, like, I think that the Yankees are really going to need to get contributions up and down the lineup because you just don't know. I think in the playoffs especially, they're going to pitch really, really carefully. Judge and Soto, like, teams are really, even more than ever, even more than the regular season, are not going to let those players beat them if they can avoid it. And that's where you need other players to step up and put them in situations where they have no choice but to pitch to them. So we'll see, with Anthony Volpe at short, you can't feel amazing about that either. So, Austin Wells has been cooling down from the catcher position. There's a lot of things. And at the end of the day, the Yankees have to find a way to get things done. And really, I think for the Yankees, it's about getting through the American League. And a final note before we go into the Pirates series, speaking on that front, as far as the seedings for the entire league, the Yankees did finish in third. So Dodgers first, Phillies second, Yankees third. So in a World Series situation where the Yankees are involved, they would have home field against everyone except the Dodgers and Phillies. And of course, those are probably the two likely teams to get there. The Yankees really did have a chance to be ahead of the Phillies. Dodgers, not so much. They ended up probably finishing maybe about 4 games or so behind the Dodgers. But with the Phillies have been losing a lot of games down the stretch, and the Yankees did have the tiebreaker over them if it came down to it. But ultimately, the Yankees finished 1 game behind them. Really should amount to no harm, no foul. And you know what? You'll take it. If it actually does matter, that means the Yankees made the World Series. So you'll kind of take that. So that's kind of a recap there. So again, Yankees finished first in the American League, and they finished third overall in all of Major League Baseball. So as far as this series goes, it would appear as if, especially the way Jack Curry and everyone kind of talks, it seems like it's Cole Rodon heel. And obviously Cortez going down, kind of takes some of that questioning out of the equation. Jake Cousins, he's still talking positively, and it would be really nice to get him back for the ALDS. So that's one of those things too. There was a time before Cousins went down, before Cortez went down, Rizzo, where you could sort of not easily, be a more simple time projecting the roster. Now, this is kind of the way it goes, right? It's hard to stay fully healthy. But now with those injuries, I'm kind of having a tough time wrapping my brain around it. Now, maybe it's as simple as you can make it maybe a little bit more simple than it would appear, at least in one spot, like Rice for Rizzo, 1-for-1 kind of is sort of an easy one. It's more of the pitching that's tough to tell. On that pitching front, I guess as it pertains to heel more so than anyone, I wouldn't mind if Clark Schmidt was a part of the top 3, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems as if it's heel rounding out that top 3, and Schmidt is number 4. Now, there's been no official announcement. We won't know that. Maybe somehow it's matchup dependent. I wouldn't think it is in that case, right? Because Heel and Schmidt are both righties, so I don't think it's so much that. But Heel, it was a tough last start for him, and just overall, I think he deserves it for the body of work that he's had. But if you're being honest with yourself, it's you just want the command to be there, and can he handle it? But if it does go wrong, hopefully it's not something that costs them a series. And that's where Cole, doing what he does and being the ace in the front of that rotation, he needs to do what he does, because then after that, you just don't know. As far as Carlos Rodon, I don't know. I think the talk around him has been very positive, and I understand it. But I will be the first one. If it doesn't go well, I will be probably one of the loudest against him. But of course, if it goes well, I will also give him the praise that he deserves. So, as much as the rotation has some pretty good depth to it, it's lost a bit without Nestor. I don't know. I definitely think that there's a little bit of flexibility as far as if someone were to struggle, you do have Clark waiting in the wings. Beyond that, it is tough because I don't really trust Marcus Stroman, and I don't think the Yankees really do either. So it's not as deep as you'd think, but that's where you hope Nestor can kind of come back somewhere along the line in the playoffs if they get far enough. But yeah, Carlos Rodon pitches game 1, and let's skim these. I think that's the way to go here, as opposed to the normal sort of total breakdowns. Rodon, 5 1/3 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. Pitched really well. Made a couple of mistakes. It was back-to-back homers by the Pirates in the top of the 6th. That was kind of the undoing. And then for the Pirates, Jared Jones, young, promising right-handed starter, goes 4 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned runs, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts. And for him, he gives up a couple of runs in the 5th. As far as the lineup went, and that's where we'll discuss a little bit the lineup, Aaron Judge did not play in games 1 or 3. And actually, game 2 goes 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. So a pretty ugly series for Judge. Just game 2 did not go his way, and I almost had to double take thinking. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 5 strikeouts. It was the platinum sombrero for Judge. And so the numbers end up still being fantastic. He's going to be the American League MVP. But he does end up with 58 home runs. And so any pursuits of the Triple Crown, which we knew for a while was, Bobby Witt was always the front runner for that for the longest time. But yeah, Judge, it ends up at 58 homers, 144 RBIs, just really incredible numbers. Juan Soto, he ends up starting in games 1 and 2. Didn't play game 3. For Soto, his numbers end up really good. 41 homers and maybe just shy of 110 RBIs, something like that. So for Soto, just a great offensive, incredible offensive season for him. If not for Aaron Judge, Soto would certainly have been in the conversation for MVP. Not quite as good as Bobby Witt Jr., probably pound for pound, but Soto, would have been in the running as a candidate. As far as just other players, and Glaber ends up starting 2 of the 3 games. Jazz Chisholm Jr. 2 of the 3. They got Dominguez in for all 3. I want to say Verdugo. For all 3 as well. At least 2 of the 3, if not all 3. And Verdugo actually ends up with a big hit, the game-winning hit in the 8th inning of Game 3, which we'll talk about. Anthony Volpe. It's always Game 2 is the one, because I have the box score in front of me in Game 1. I have the recency of remembering Game 3, so it's always Game 2 that's kind of the one that eludes me the most. But I think Volpe, you know what? Volpe, I think he didn't. I think it was 2 of the 3. I think Volpe ends up coming in as a replacement because Rizzo leaves the game in Game 2. So they moved Oswaldo from short to first, and then Volpe came in to play shortstop. Trent Grisham, he ends up starting games 1 and 3. Grisham actually with some good contributions in that 3rd game where the Yankees won. Trevino starts game 1 and 3, and then Oswaldo Cabrera starts games 1 and 2. So they really did mix it up a lot. And so the players I haven't mentioned, for example, like John Birdie, I think was in 2 and 3. Yeah, Birdie was 2 and 3. Wells was 2 and 3 also. Stanton was games 2 and 3. Again, they really, that was kind of the plan, and it makes sense. It really does. And it all worked out, because let's go to the mindset. The mindset for me, like, I really wanted the Yankees to finish in first in the American League. And so it was a little bit upsetting losing Game 1, losing Game 2. The way it got clinched for the Yankees actually was the Guardians losing to the Astros in Game 2. So it wasn't based around a Yankee win. They had kind of gotten it from Cleveland losing. So, again, no harm, no foul. But it's not to say that these games didn't have some bit of meaning. But I also understand kind of dialing it down a bit, considering the Yankees had just clinched the AL East. So let's just go to the scoring innings. That's what we'll do here, certainly for Game 1. And in the 5th inning, the Yankees get a good rally going against Jones, which leads to a situation where Jazz Chisholm Jr., they actually bring on Joey Wentz. I believe Wentz is a lefty. Pretty certain that he is. And Chisholm Jr. gets a 2-run single to give the Yankees a 2-0 lead. You get to a situation where it's bases loaded, 1 out, and Verdugo doesn't get the run in. Now, I know Verdugo gets that big hit in Game 3. He's not inspiring much confidence, but look, Dominguez hasn't really been great either. So who starts in left field? Flip a coin. I don't really know. Who it's going to be. If I had to guess, I'll say Dominguez, but it's not one that I'd be shocked at all if it's Verdugo. But Verdugo doesn't get that run, and then Volpe, to his credit, hits it hard but lines out. So the Yankees really could have blown it open, but didn't. 2-0, and then Rodon gets into some trouble in the 6th. Back-to-back homers by Nick Gonzalez and Brian Reynolds ties it up at 2. Then you get some good work by Ian Hamilton in the 6th, Clay Holmes in the 7th, and then Tommy Kahnle in the 8th gets into some trouble. Billy Cook gets a single to start up the inning, and then Brian Reynolds homers again. 2-run homer Brian Reynolds, his 24th homer of the year, gives the Pirates a 4-2 lead. So Tommy Kahnle's season kind of ends on a little bit of a down note, but still a great season for him and someone that will be really, really relied upon as one of the high leverage relievers in the postseason. But yeah, that gives the Pirates a 4-2 lead. Former Yankee Dennis Santana, who actually has really found it with the Pirates for the last few months as a really dependable reliever for them, pitches a 1-2-3 8th inning, and then Aroldis Chapman comes in the 9th. Chapman got a couple of saves in this series. And yeah, actually gets a couple of strikeouts and looks good doing so. So for Chapman, all in all, even though, older in age and, has certainly had his down moments, like the stuff is still there for him. The strikeout ability is still very much there for him. So he's going to continue to find jobs in the league. Maybe not being employed by the best teams, but at the same time, he did win a World Series with the Texas Rangers last year. So yeah, Chapman, who I was glad when he was gone, is showing that he still has game. So the Pirates win 4-2. but Cleveland loses, so it drops the magic number for the American League down to 1. Game 2 is a matchup that on paper looked pretty appealing. Paul Skeens versus Luis Gil. Now, Paul Skeens only goes 2 innings, which was kind of a shame. Skeens looked awesome, had like 3 strikeouts in 2 innings, looked really good doing it, but the Pirates just, with the season coming to a close, didn't want to push him, and so he only goes to 2 innings. But the Yankees still lose, even with that. Luis Gil gives up 4 homers, and that's unlike him. Luis Gil, his bugaboo is the walks, not the home runs. And so it was surprising to see him go 4 home runs. The weather in the Bronx kind of getting worse. I mean, it was really bad in game 3, but game 2 wasn't really great either. Kind of a musty, I think that's the wrong word to describe it. Just an ugly day at the Bronx. Windy, not pleasant. And so Gil goes 5 2/3 innings, allows 6 hits, 6 runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. And the loss drops his record to 15-7, finishes up with a 3.50 ERA on the season. And by the way, Carlos Rodon, his ERA below 4, barely on the season. For the Pirates, Paul Skeens, like I said, goes 2 innings. His ERA for the year, 1.96. Like, this is already one of the very best pitchers in the game. At a young age, 22? It's just, he's going to be fun to watch as long as he stays healthy. And so really the bulk guy, if you will, was a pitcher making his major league debut, Mike Burrows, a right-handed pitcher who did pretty well. The stat line doesn't pop out at you, but he only allowed 1 earned run. And so it was a lot of relievers to the Pirates in this one. I already not going to get into the lineup stuff as that was already kind of discussed. But yeah, just home run troubles for Gil for the most part. Yasmani Grandal hits his 9th homer of the season in the 2nd inning. 4th inning, Nick Gonzalez, who homers again, his 7th homer of the year, makes it 2-0. 4th inning, that wasn't the 4th inning. 5th inning, it would be Billy Cook with a 2-run homer. His 3rd of the year makes it 4-0. Jazz Chisholm Jr., he hits his 24th homer of the year in the bottom of the 5th, makes it 4-1. So for Jazz, good to see him with a couple of good games there, but he had been kind of struggling going in, so that was good to kind of cap it off on his 2024 season. Makes it 4-1 there. But then in the 6th, Jared Triolo hits his 9th homer of the year, 2-run homer. So yeah, a tough go for Luis Gil. That Triolo one was kind of unfortunate, more of a Yankee Stadium weather-related homer, but it still counts the same. Then from there, let's just go the pitching. Clayton Beeter looked really good. 1 1/3 innings, no hits, no runs, no walks, 3 strikeouts. Could he somehow make the postseason roster? I guess. It's possible. I think he's probably in the mix. So he pitched pretty well there. And in the bottom of the 7th is where Anthony Rizzo gets hit by a pitch. So by lefty Ryan Borucki, he was in pain. And yeah, he would eventually, like the next inning, he wouldn't come back out. And as I discussed before, unfortunately for Rizzo, we may not see him again. Hopefully we do, but it's not looking great, at least as far as the ALDS is concerned. So yeah, that happens. And then as the inning goes on, with Borucki still on the mound, you get an RBI single by Juan Soto with 2 out. But Soto, his base running has really not been good. It's overly aggressive, really bordering on reckless. He ends up getting thrown out at second base. It was a bobble by the right fielder, I think, briefly. I think it was that play. And Soto tries to go for second and is just gunned out by a mile, with Judge as the tying run on deck. And mind you, the Yankees are still in a position where they had not secured the number 1 spot in the American League. And just not good base running by Soto, like kind of inexcusable. And so what could have been a bigger inning ends up just 6-3. Gets that RBI single there. In the 8th, Tim Hill pitches a 1-2-3 inning, and Tim Hill has been a godsend for the Yankees and has been everything the Yankees could have won and more. He will be a key lefty out of the pen in the postseason. Dennis Santana gets into some trouble in the 8th. RBI double for Jazz Chisholm Jr., and then Volpe as the tying run grounds out to end the inning. Then Will Warren in the 9th. Not good. And for Warren, hopefully next year will be better. Look, we've seen, not to this extent, but I remember when Clark Schmidt came up, and I think with Clark Schmidt, there was higher hopes for many, many reasons, more than Will Warren. But for Clark, I remember, in his brief appearances, it wasn't great. It took him a while to get going. I'm hoping with Will Warren, maturation and things like that will help and he can find it. But yeah, he has not really impressed at all at the major league level. There is strikeout ability. I'll give him that. He has swing and miss stuff, but yeah, gives up a lot of runs, a lot of damage, and what happens is Yasmani Grandal gets an RBI single, and Nick Yorke gets a 2-run homer, his second homer of the year, gives the Pirates a 9-4 lead. And then Aroldis Chapman, things would get a little bit dicey, I guess, for the Pirates, where it ends up bases loaded, 1 out, and they bring on, right, was that the situation? The bases loaded, 1 out, which makes sense, right? So it was a safe situation because the tying run would have been on deck. And Chapman strikes out Judge, and Wells lines out to end it. So Pirates win the series at that point. And now let's go to game 3. Game 3 is really the one where it's like it had a completely different feel. Because, again, Yankees have already clinched the 1 spot. It was a rain delay. Like, the importance was completely minimal. You had a long, pretty lengthy rain delay. Honestly, if it weren't the last game of the season, I think that they would have just scrapped the game for sure. I think they would have had it be postponed if it were, let's say in June or July or something. But they got the game in. No one got hurt in this game, and some key relievers and players got some valuable reps in. So Aaron Judge was in this original lineup, but the weather led to them deciding, you know what, not worth it. And it wasn't worth it. Like, why? At that point, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be one thing if, he was, at 60, if he was at, 61 homers or 62 homers or something, right? Like, that would be one thing. But there, what was there really to gain, from a personal standpoint? So, for the Yanks, Clark Schmidt was the pitcher. He goes 4 innings, 3 hits, 4 runs, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. Not a great game for Schmidt, but to be fair to him, the conditions were really, really awful. And so I'm not gonna, complain too much. It's just too bad because it's someone who I want Clark to be in that top 3. Unfortunately, he didn't really have that opportunity to put up this great outing. For the Pirates, lefty Bailey Falter was the pitcher. He didn't pitch well either. He was worse than Schmidt. 3 innings, 4 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks, and no strikeouts. So a pretty ugly line for him. And it started out good for the Yanks. 2-run homer for Trent Grisham, his 9th homer of the year. Off the lefty, Trent Grisham, one of the saddest things was Trent Grisham in his career has been better against lefties than righties. But for some reason, the Yankees never really tapped into that at all. And so, 2-0 Yanks at that point. And then in the third, just a long drawn-out inning against Clark Schmidt where he gives up some runs. A 2-run double by Josh Palacios, and then a sac fly by Jared Triolo makes it 3-2. But the Yankees respond back with a couple of runs. An RBI single for Trent Grisham. Mind you, Gleyber Torres had a couple of doubles in this game. So Gleyber really ending off the season very strong offensively. 257 batting average with a 708 OPS is not going to sound great, but compared to where he was, it's pretty good. And Gleyber is very capable offensively. His defense is scary. His base running is bad. But he can be a hitter, and he's a needed hitter in this Yankee lineup. So Grisham with 3 RBIs at that point, and then Stanton grounds into a double play, which scores a run, gives the Yankees a 4-3 lead. Let's go to the 5th. Schmidt gives a leadoff walk to Brian Reynolds. They bring on Mark Leiter Jr. He gives up that run and throws a lot of pitches, but it ends up 4-4 at the end of that inning. Like I said, he does strike out the side, but did allow a couple of walks. Then just a lot of good pitching from then on. 6th inning is Ian Hamilton, and Hamilton, I think, will have a pretty decent-sized role in the pen. Tim Meza with a scoreless 7th. I think Meza is deserving of being that second lefty on the roster in the postseason. And then the 8th inning, Luke Weaver, who has just been awesome. He actually ends up getting the win, his 7th win of the season, and gets a couple of strikeouts as well. So Weaver is really at the top of the line of the pecking order. And the Yankees are able to get a 2-out rally in the 8th. A bunch of, a hit by pitch to Austin Wells, which I thought originally, I originally thought it was a wall. It was on a 3-2 count. So, but I guess it goes down as a hit by pitch. And then a walk to Dominguez, a walk to Birdie, and then Alex Verdugo. You hope that somehow that he gets a 2-run single to give the Yankees a 6-4 lead, a big hit in the context of his confidence. The game really didn't mean much. Other than it was good that the Yankees didn't go to extra innings. I don't think fans wanted that. I don't think players wanted that. So that was good. So Verdugo, hopefully that can be a springboard, but I'm not so confident in that. And then ironically, it's ironic that Alex Verdugo and Clay Holmes seal this game. And those were 2 players that were really good for the first couple of months of the season. When the Yankees were building up that record, those were two key cogs. Clay Holmes against his former team is able to get the save. This is a blessing and a curse. I think more of a curse. He gets the save, his 30th save of the season. So a nice round number for Clay, 30 saves. And he didn't break the record, the blown save record too, which would have been kind of funny if it did happen that way. But for Clay, I don't trust it. And I think that the Yankees are going to put him in big spots. And I just don't know how it's going to go. And with him doing well here, they're really going to feel more empowered to do it. So the Yankees win 6-4, win the last game of the regular season. Record ends up at 94-68. And now we wait. We wait to see what happens in the Orioles-Royals series, which will be in Baltimore, all 2 or 3 of those games, depending on how long it goes. And then the ALDS will start on Saturday the 5th, I think is the date. I think that's what it is. Let's see. Saturday the 5th. Yeah, so we don't know times or anything like that. We should have, on the preview episode, we should have a better idea on that. I mean, typically the playoff Yankee games tend to be night games. They like to put them in prime time, but you never know. And there will be a day in between game 1 and 2 in the American League series. So it'll be a Saturday game 1, Monday game 2, and that's pending good. And that's assuming that there's good weather and no rainouts and stuff like that. So a fun time of year is ahead. Hopefully for the Yankees, it doesn't end quickly. Again, the hope for me, look, you want to win the World Series, right? That is obvious. But really, it is attainable to get through the American League. When you look at the teams in the league, I look at the National League, and to me, that they seem deeper. They do, top to bottom. And the Yankees have home field advantage. I think the Yankees have a lot of flaws. I really do. I mean, but at the same time, it's as good a shot as I think they've had in some time to maybe, make a bit of a run. And we will see how things play out. We will learn a lot more in the coming days in many, many ways. And looking forward to, again, putting out that preview episode. Please like and subscribe. We're going to do a ton of Yankee playoff content. It's going to be fun. So, yeah, Yankees 2024 regular season's over. AL East champs. American League #1 seed insured, and we will see what the playoffs have in store. ALDS, not too far away. Hopefully the Yankees will start a very long October and into November.